The story begins at a seemingly normal school with several students walking through the courtyard. Inside the school, we arrive at the cafeteria where many students are enjoying their lunch. A boy is sleeping at a table until his chubby friend arrives with food and calls him Gavin Clark. His friend tries to wake him up and says he brought food so he could eat. The friend thinks the guy is tired because he was up late talking to Senior Scott. Waking up confused, the young man wonders where he is and notices a very good smell in the air. He looks at the tray and sees a full meal with rice and chicken, looking surprised. Suddenly, the guy jumps up and yells for everyone to hear that this is real food. The boy now stares at the plates, drooling with hunger, and his friend is startled by his reaction. Without a second thought, he starts devouring the food on the table like a wild animal. The chubby friend asks him to take it easy or else he'll end up choking. He then gets mad because he realizes the protagonist is eating his own food. After eating everything, the guy appears with a full belly and says he's finally back. With a serious look, he thinks that he can't believe it, but it seems he has truly been reborn. His friend asks if he's full and if he was a starving ghost in his past life. The protagonist replies that he was indeed reincarnated from a ghost who was overcome by hunger. With a chilling smile, he reveals that in a freezing apocalypse, he perished from starvation. The friend doesn't understand anything and asks if his girlfriend broke up with him for him to act like this. The guy then puts a hand on his friend's shoulder to calm him down and explain the situation. He says that Yahello Parker is alive and that now they can start over and get everything back. Yahello gets confused and asks his friend to stop being weird because of course he's alive. The protagonist then asks what the date is, and his friend replies that it's August 8th, 2024. The guy explains that in half a month, the world will enter an ice age from a 3-month-long blizzard. His friend thinks that's ridiculous since it's the middle of summer and asks if he's having problems. The young man says he needs help, and Yahello says he'll do anything because of their friendship. So the protagonist asks to borrow $1 billion, and his friend spits out his drink in shock. The chubby guy asks if he's being serious, and the young man confirms he is completely serious. Yahello refuses right away, saying that even if he sold his own father, he couldn't get $1 billion. The protagonist asks how much he would sell his father for, and Yahello guesses around 500 million tops. The guy gets irritated and yells that Yahello is the one selling his father, calling him heartless. At that moment, a couple walks past them, and the blonde guy says he reserved a private room for the two of them. The two friends then look in the direction of the couple that just passed by. This guy Zach says he's going to show Xenia something big after dinner, and she likes the idea. Yahello recognizes the girl as Xenia and points out that she's cheating on his friend with Zach Young. The couple then turns around and comes face to face with the two guys standing there, watching everything. Xenia is shocked and asks what Gavin is doing there with a stunned look on her face. The chubby friend gets angry and says that Gavin saved up to buy expensive clothes for her. The girl doesn't care and says she won't explain anything because it is exactly what it looks like. The protagonist has a flashback to his past life where he took care of her after she was abandoned. He remembers that she betrayed him several times and that he passed away from hunger because of her. His friend tries to convince Gavin to leave since the girl isn't even hiding it anymore, but the guy says he's in no hurry. Yahello is confused and asks why they would stay because just looking at her makes him feel sick. Zach mocks the protagonist, saying that Xenia called him clingy, and it looks like she was right. The young woman then tells Gavin to stop bothering her, and says that everything he did was harassment and that she finds him disgusting. With a serious look, the protagonist asks if they are done talking. The blonde guy asks if he isn't going to leave, and Xenia says that even if he got on his knees, she wouldn't take him back. His friend tries to pull him away, but Gavin asks for 5 more minutes to handle the situation. Yahello doesn't understand why and wonders why a nice guy like him can't see who she really is. Zach laughs and says he'd love to see the guy's tricks in 5 minutes, and if it's entertaining, he'll give him a prize. Without a second thought, the protagonist gives the blonde guy a hard slap across the face. The girl is shocked by the scene and desperately yells Zach's name. The friend and everyone else around are left with their mouths wide open at what just happened. Holding his face, the blonde guy gets furious and asks how the guy dares to hit him. Zach then raises his fist in anger and gets ready to return the attack. He yells that he's going to finish the protagonist, but the dark-haired guy remains calm and still in the same spot. Before the blonde guy can do anything, Gavin hits him with a kick to the face and tells him to get lost. The chubby friend is impressed by his buddy's strength and wonders just how tough he is. With Zach on the ground, Xenia runs over, worried to see if he's okay. She yells at Gavin, telling him he's in huge trouble for laying a hand on the hair of a major corporation. The blonde guy gets up and says he's a black belt in Taekwondo and that he won't lose to a punk. Without even giving the blonde guy time to react, the protagonist lands another punch and calls him trash. He thinks that the apocalypse was a chance to learn how to fight and that dealing with a guy like this is easy. His friend is shocked by his buddy's strength and asks since when he became so strong. The girl gets furious and yells that the guy will regret hurting Zach. She then tells the protagonist to get on his knees and apologize, or else she'll never forgive him. Out of patience, the guy slaps the young woman across the face and asks who she thinks she is. The blonde guy gets up furious and threatens to destroy the protagonist, saying it will be as easy as crushing an ant. But before he can do anything, the protagonist hits him with an uppercut to the chin. Seizing the opportunity, the dark-haired guy quickly grabs something from the blonde's jacket pocket. He then reveals a spray can and says he knew he'd find that on him. The blonde guy yells desperately and tells the protagonist to give the object back immediately. With a smirk, the dark-haired guy asks how many girls he has already harmed using that item. The other guy denies everything and tries to get the spray back, saying he doesn't know what he's talking about. Without wasting any time, the protagonist sprays the entire contents of the can in the blonde guy's face. He starts to scream in pain, and the girl runs over, worried, to see what happened. She asks what's wrong, but the blonde guy tells her to get away and stay away from him. The guy's eyes get strange and he seems to be completely out of his mind. He then turns and grabs the girl next to him with a crazed look. Completely out of control, the blonde-haired guy ends up tearing the young woman's dress in front of everyone. The girl panics and yells for him to stop because they are in the middle of the cafeteria. The girl screams desperately for help while Zach continues to attack her uncontrollably. The protagonist announces that the 5 minutes are up and his friend is still in shock from the scene. He explains that the spray was a substance that makes a person lose their senses and turn into a beast. His friend worries about the police, but the guy says Zach wouldn't risk being exposed. And also, being very proud, the Hair of the Dragon group would try to get revenge on his own. Yahello agrees and says that given his personality, he would handle this privately. Leaving the cafeteria, the chubby guy asks where they're going now. With a smile on his face, the protagonist replies that he's going to sell his house. They soon arrive at a real estate agency, and the friend seems very worried about the idea. He questions selling his parents' only house, but the guy is completely decided. The young man thinks that with the money, he needs to stock up on supplies for the apocalypse. The real estate agent hands over the papers and comments that there's no rush to sell with prices so high. Leaving the place, the friend asks what their next stop will be. The protagonist then announces with a smile that now it's time to spend money. A short time later, the two friends arrive at a very large supermarket. The guy starts asking the employee for 1,000 units of rice flour and oil, and he also asks for 10,000 units of each of the canned goods on the shelf. The attendant is completely shocked by the order and asks if the gentleman is sure. The young man confirms and his friend jokes, asking if he's opening his own supermarket. He then asks if the market does deliveries, and the employee says yes, they take care of everything. The guy asks if his friend's family has a warehouse, and Yahello questions if he's going to store everything there. The young man then asks to borrow the warehouse and for the address so he can go buy more things. At that moment, two girls appear in the supermarket aisle, watching the guys. They recognize him and mock him for being cheated on, questioning how he can afford to shop at that place. Next, he orders 5 state-of-the-art computers and 10 televisions and video game consoles. The guy thinks that with the apocalypse, entertainment will be essential for passing the time. The employee gets super excited and calls him the biggest customer of the year, leaving the other two shocked. The girls are in shock over the cost and wonder how a poor guy like him has so much money. The protagonist then asks to have all the electronics and the winter jackets packed up. The purple-haired girl wonders if he's really poor since he's already spent over 1 million. They conclude that he's a rich guy in disguise and that this is a huge opportunity for them. The guy thinks he's almost ready for the apocalypse and now needs to focus on something more important. A female voice greets him and the guy recognizes her instantly with a serious look. The two of them approach and compliment him, saying he suddenly got much more handsome. He remembers that in the apocalypse, they led some thugs and once robbed him, nearly leaving him to freeze. The purple-haired one asks why he's so quiet and invites him to get a bite to eat. The guy accepts the invitation and asks his friend to take the things back while he handles something. The girls celebrate that the fool agreed and plan to spend all his money at a fancy restaurant. The protagonist says he's starving and leaves the market with the two girls. A short time later, the trio arrives in front of a building that looks very expensive and luxurious. The girls take him to the restaurant, and he pretends to be surprised by how expensive the place looks. Once inside the fancy place, one of the girls asks the guy what he thinks of the food there. Looking at the menu, the protagonist pretends to be shocked and asks if it isn't a little too pricey. The two don't care and say that if he's not going to order anything, they'll order for themselves. The one in the green dress then orders all the most expensive dishes on the menu from the waitress. An hour later, the purple-haired girl says she's super full, as she hadn't eaten that much in a long time. She asks Gavin how his meal was, and he says it was great but that he needs to step out for a bit. The protagonist then gets up from the table and calmly walks toward the reception area. There, he ignores the bill and asks them to prepare 100 tables with the same dishes for 10 days from now. The employee's jaw drops at the request and she asks if the gentleman is sure about that. The guy just hands the girl a VP card and says he can pay for everything in advance. He remembers eating canned food during the apocalypse and wants to secure good food for the future. The girls think he went to pay and call him a rich fool, planning to go buy purses afterward. The receptionist confirms the huge order and then asks about the bill for their table. With a victorious smile, the young man takes his card back and says they can pay for themselves. He thinks that he spent almost all the money from the house and that now it's time to take out loans. The guy then starts accessing various online loan websites on his phone. Walking down the street, he celebrates getting 2.7 million from 36 companies. Suddenly, the protagonist's cell phone starts to ring, and the name Sharon appears on the screen. On the other end of the line, the girl shouts furiously, asking where on earth he's gone. On the phone, the guy says something unexpected came up and that he's already on his way home. With a mocking smile, he then asks why he should be the one to pay the bill. On the other end of the line, the girl screams that he was the one who invited them to eat. The young man retorts that he never invited them, and that they were the ones who dragged him there. The purple-haired one gets furious and asks if he expects them to pay for that expensive food. He scoffs at them and asks why they're complaining about the price if they insisted on ordering the priciest dishes. A man in the restaurant calls them a disgrace and says Gavin is a loser who can't pay. She then asks the receptionist if it's true that he ordered 100 tables, and the girl confirms it. Desperate, the girl begs Gavin to come back and pay the bill since he has so much money. The guy hangs up the phone and says he's not paying for two spoiled brats like them. The girls panic because they don't have any money, and the manager informs them they don't do tabs. Angrily, the girl decides to call some guy named Hunter to teach the protagonist a lesson. Meanwhile, the young man arrives in front of a lottery store with a plan in mind. He remembers winning the lottery in his past life, and that now he can win much more. Using his memory from the past, the guy fills out the ticket with the numbers he knows will win. Holding the ticket, he says that now he just has to wait 2 days for the results. The protagonist then returns to the warehouse and finds his friend Yahello on the floor. The chubby guy complains that he was left behind, but his friend promises to take him out to have some fun. Inside the warehouse filled with boxes, his friend asks what the point of spending so much is. The young man explains that in the apocalypse, these supplies will save lives and asks Yahello to trust him. His buddy says that if the guy didn't seem so normal, he'd think his friend had gone crazy. The protagonist smiles and says there's no rush because in a few days, the chubby guy will believe him. Suddenly, some strange guys show up, and one of them asks if he's the guy named Gavin Clark. The young man confirms his identity and asks if they're goons for a man named Hunter. A bald guy with a bat accuses him of messing with Hunter's woman and calls him bold. The chubby friend gets scared and threatens to call the police as the thugs surround them. The bald guy scoffs and dares him to call to see who gets there first, the police or him. The protagonist then steps in and tells his friend that he doesn't need to call the authorities. The thugs laugh at the young man's attitude and call him a coward for not wanting to involve the police. The chubby friend tries to negotiate and says his father is the head of a major construction company. The bald guy recognizes the name and says he won't touch him, but that their target is Gavin. Desperate, his buddy yells for the protagonist to run while he tries to hold the guy's back. A blonde guy shoves the chubby friend, and the bald guy prepares to attack the young man with the baseball bat. Terrified, the chubby friend screams Gavin's name desperately as he watches the scene. The protagonist stops the bat with one hand and says the attack was slow and that the guy has never trained. Next, he lands a powerful kick in the bald guy's stomach, making the man drop the bat. The big guy spits out a bit of blood and asks how the little brat dared to do that. The young man picks the bat up off the floor and lands a solid hit right in the goon's face. The hit is so strong that the bat smacks right into the bald guy's mouth, leaving him in shock. The other goons get scared and say the kid is ruthless because he completely took out the bald guy. With the bat on his shoulder, the protagonist smiles and challenges all the others to come at him together. Pointing at the goons, he stares them down with a look full of confidence and determination. The blonde guy then yells for his buddies to go all out and finish the kid. With swift and precise movements, the young man takes down all the thugs and seems to be having fun. The chubby friend is shocked and wonders if that's still the same Gavin he knew. With everyone on the floor, the guy asks if that was enough, and the goons surrender on the spot. He then demands 100,000 from each of them, and the blonde guy shouts that this is extortion. Out of patience, the protagonist lands another blow to the thug's face, who screams in pain. The guy threatens to mess up their legs if they don't hurry up and make the transfer. A little later, the young man's phone gets a notification for 600,000 in his account. He thinks that he's not cruel, but that the apocalypse has changed his mind forever. The protagonist hugs his friend and says he's going to take him someplace really exciting. The two arrive at a nightclub full of lights, with several people dancing on the floor. The chubby friend loves the place and says it's perfect for relaxing after so much trouble. The guy goes to the bar and tells the girl he's looking for the boss for a delivery. Suddenly, the two friends are walking down a hallway lined with several security guards in suits. Yahello is terrified and the protagonist asks if the situation is exciting or not. The chubby guy says his heart is racing and that this is the wrong kind of excitement. The security guards start shouting that Mr. Lowe has arrived, making his friend even more tense. They then stand in front of a man with his back turned, who has long purple hair. The man turns around, revealing himself to be an old man who asks if they are there for a delivery. The protagonist says it's the first time they've met and that he came after hearing about the delivery. Mr. Lowe then questions where the goods are, since the two of them are empty-handed. With a smile, the guy says that they are the goods, and the old man finds the situation amusing. But suddenly, the boss gets serious and orders his armed security guards to detain the two young men. The chubby friend panics and tries to use his father's name to get out of the mess. He asks what kind of goods they're delivering, and the young man explains that it's their organs. Yahello gets even more desperate and shouts, how does his friend expect him not to panic? The young man then challenges the boss and asks if the famous Mr. Lo doesn't dare to buy. He then makes an offer, saying that for 10 million, all his organs belong to the old man. The boss makes a counteroffer and offers 5 million, saying the market price is low. The guy accepts and asks for the money first, promising to deliver the body in 3 days, and the old man agrees. Mr. Lo then orders one of his goons to bring the contracts for the two to sign. The protagonist asks why there's only one contract and requests another for his friend, who immediately refuses. Ignoring the protests, the young man tells the security guard not to listen to him because he is indeed selling. The security guard then forces the chubby guy to sign the contract at gunpoint. Leaving the place, his buddy yells at his friend, calling him inhuman for selling him out. The guy tells him not to worry, but the chubby friend says Lo is a dangerous gang leader. With a serious look, the young man reveals that in 3 days, that Lo guy will be gone. His friend doesn't believe it, but the protagonist says he's gonna make him believe in the apocalypse. In front of a large mansion, a realtor asks if the guy is sure he only wants to rent that one house. He confirms with absolute certainty and tells the woman he's not interested in any of the others. The chubby friend doesn't understand anything and asks why they're suddenly renting a mansion. The protagonist remembers that in his past life, that mansion was the safest place during the apocalypse. He then decides that since he passed away there in his past life, his new life will begin in that very same place. The realtor warns that the owner doesn't want to rent, but the guy offers double the rental price. Even so, she says it's not a matter of money, and he raises the offer to 5 times the price. With a smile, the young man offers 10 times the rent and says he can pay the first month right now. Excited, the woman guarantees she'll get the house for him, even if she has to beg the owner. He then says he has one condition: he wants to completely renovate the house before moving in. Suddenly, an older woman appears, telling Xenia to seize the opportunity with Zach. The chubby friend is surprised to see the girl there and wonders what she's doing. The guy explains that it's simple and that this Zach young guy has a mansion in that community. Xenia gets an expression of anger and contempt upon seeing her ex-boyfriend standing there. She yells at him and accuses him of stalking her again after what happened last time. The girl's mother butts in and says her daughter would never be interested in a poor, futureless student. The protagonist gets annoyed and asks if the two of them are idiots and who would be stalking them. With a mocking smile, he says they can condemn him all they want, but renting a house has nothing to do with them. Xenia scoffs at the guy and doubts he has the money to pay the 20,000 a month rent. At that moment, the realtor returns and announces that everything is settled and the rent is 25,000. Xenia's mother is shocked and can't believe the poor guy actually rented the mansion. The girl mocks him and says it's useless for him to try so hard to be near her because she doesn't want him. The protagonist and his friend think the girl is completely crazy and delusional for thinking that. Her mother says the rent is low and that this doesn't qualify him to chase after her daughter. The realtor reminds them that the offer was for 10 times the price, and the guy agrees to pay right away. Mother and daughter are speechless and doubt he has 250,000 to pay. Unfazed, the young man makes the transfer on the spot and shows the receipt on his phone. The realtor hands over the keys and says the house is his to renovate as he wishes. The mother wonders if the guy is from a rich family, and Xenia says it's impossible and she'll investigate. Walking down the street, the protagonist asks if his friend knows the head of the biggest renovation company in the city. He asks his friend to set up a meeting, and the chubby guy questions the plan to renovate the mansion. The guy tells him not to ask questions and just set up the meeting because he'll understand everything tonight. His friend manages to get the meeting for the same day because the boss postponed everything to meet him. The protagonist thanks him and says he'll send a truck of instant noodles as a gift. With a smile, he tells his friend not to worry because his father will love the gift soon enough. They arrive at the renovation company, and an employee asks them to wait for the CEO. Xenia and her mother are also there, and the older woman tells her daughter to secure a good renovation. The two friends enter the waiting room, and the receptionist asks if they have an appointment. The girl gets furious upon seeing them and accuses him of following her to the renovation company. The protagonist loses his patience and wonders why he keeps running into these two idiots. Xenia makes fun of the protagonist's friend and says it's foolish to renovate a place that isn't his. The guy introduces himself to the receptionist and says he has a meeting scheduled for that time. The mother and daughter doubt he's there for a renovation and think he's just showing off. A heavy-set man in a suit arrives and asks the employee where the person he has a meeting with is. The receptionist points toward the group and says the person is right there, waiting. Xenia's mother gets all excited seeing Mr. Zhao and praises Zach's influence. She then turns to the protagonist and rubs the difference in their status in his face. The red-haired girl approaches and greets the man with a smile on her face. Mr. Zhao is confused and asks if she has a meeting scheduled him at that moment. Xenia quickly says yes, and that she is the person who is there for the meeting. The man asks if her name is Gavin Clark, and the girl says no and that her name is Xenia. Out of patience, Mr. Zhao shoves her aside and tells her not to get in his way. The protagonist then approaches and formally introduces himself as Gavin Clark to the man. The company head is surprised by the guy's youth and invites him to talk in more detail. Xenia's mother doesn't understand anything, and her daughter says it must be a connection through Yaniel's rich family. Once inside the manager's office, the two prepare to discuss the renovation project. Mr. Yahello sits down and asks his young friend what he wishes to renovate. With a confident smile, the protagonist replies that he wants to renovate an entire mansion. The man says it's a small job and that he'll ask his design director to handle it. But the guy insists and says it would be better if Mr. Zhao himself discussed it personally. Mr. Zhao says that to be honest, he's very busy and only deals with large projects. The protagonist then assures him that he is a large project, and the man asks about the budget. The guy reveals that his budget is at least 30 million, and the boss starts to laugh. But suddenly, the man realizes the amount and is completely shocked by what he just heard. He then asks if the young man is sure about the number, and if he didn't mean 3 million. With a confident smile, the guy confirms that the total budget is 30 million. A director shows up to help, but the boss dismisses him on the spot and says he'll handle everything himself. Mr. Zhou comments that with that money, he could buy a mansion and asks about the renovation. In response, the protagonist hands over a roll of paper and says the project blueprints are in there. Analyzing the papers, the man is shocked and asks if he's building a fortress. The young man says he can pay more if needed and that the only requirement is to finish in half a month. The boss finds the project difficult and says it looks like a war bunker for the apocalypse. The guy then tells him to assume it is the apocalypse and offers an advance payment of 20 million. With a determined look, the man accepts the job and promises to mobilize all the company's resources. Leaving the place, the chubby friend freaks out and says it's crazy to spend 35 million on a rented house. The protagonist warns that the money will soon be worthless, and his friend asks where the cash came from. He then reveals that he took out 10 million in loans, and Yaniel says the apocalypse better be real. Outside, Xenia taunts him and asks how much he spent trying to get her attention. Already out of patience, the guy tells her to mind her own business and says it's none of her concern. The girl's mother brags that her daughter spent 1 million and says that's real power. The chubby friend chimes in and says 1 million is nothing because Gavin spent 35. Xenia starts laughing and says she'd believe it if it were 500,000, but not 35 million. The protagonist then challenges her, asking if she'd call him daddy if he really spent that much. The girl says she's already investigated and knows he got 3 million at most from his house. Her mother joins in on the joke and says she'll call him daddy if he really spent all that. An employee appears and hands over the contract that the guy forgot to grab when he left. The older woman snatches the paper and says she's going to expose his lie in front of everyone there. But upon reading the document, her expression changes completely and her jaw drops. Her daughter asks what's wrong, and the mother is speechless when she sees the amount written on the paper. With a look of panic, the woman reveals that the amount on the contract really is 35 million. Desperately, she yells that the contract is fake, because it's impossible for him to have that much money. The employee defends the company and says the contract was signed by the boss and is not fake. The protagonist approaches the woman and calls her out on her promise to call him daddy. Without hesitating, he slaps the woman across the face, sending her flying to the side. The chubby friend celebrates the scene, and the guy says it's time for them to leave. Xenia screams furiously and swears she'll never forgive him for humiliating her mother like that. By nightfall, the two friends return to the mansion they had just rented that day. The chubby guy doesn't understand anything and asks why they're back at that place. The protagonist smiles and says that now he's going to make him believe the apocalypse is coming. His friend thinks the guy is acting weird and that either he's gone crazy or the apocalypse is real. The chubby friend complains about the cold and says the weather is strange for the middle of summer. With his phone in hand, the protagonist says it's almost time for something to happen. Suddenly, a shooting star crosses the sky, and the guy says that it has finally arrived. His buddy doesn't understand and asks what's so special about a simple shooting star. The young man explains that the apocalypse will come soon, but that there are some clear signs beforehand. The chubby guy points to the sky, frightened, and says the star seems to be coming toward them. The protagonist reveals that the stars grant abilities, and that's why the neighborhood became a base. He remembers that one of these stars fell on the mansion and was found by a thief. His friend panics and yells for the other to run because the star is going to hit them head on. But the guy stays put and with a smile says that this opportunity is all his. The chubby guy tries to stop him and asks if he has some kind of death wish. The protagonist's body is enveloped in a golden light, and he appears to float in the air. His friend is in shock and thinks it's the end, because Gavin was crushed by the shooting star. But to his surprise, the guy is fine and says his physical attributes have increased 5 times over. With a golden aura around him, he turns to his buddy and asks if he believes him now. The chubby guy is speechless and, with wide eyes, asks if his friend isn't gone. The protagonist smiles and says not only is he alive, but he also gained a special ability. His friend doesn't see a difference and asks how he got stronger if he looks the same as before. The guy then places a hand on the chubby friend's shoulder, who is confused by the action. With incredible strength, he lifts his friend into the air with just one hand, leaving him shocked. With a confident smile, the guy asks if his friend finally believes him. The friend freaks out because he weighs over 90 kilograms and was easily lifted with just one hand. Suspended in the air by his companion, the young man is surprised and asks what's going on. With a confident smile, his savior tells him to get down immediately. He then leaps from the top of the mansion, and his friend screams in panic, fearing the worst for them both. Landing safely with his friend in his arms, a powerful impact is felt on the ground. The sturdier companion is completely shocked and wonders if he's all right after the fall. A smile appears on the hero's face as he asks if the other believes him now. The answer is yes, since he survived the jump. Meanwhile, Xenia and her mother are inside the house, and the older woman asks what her daughter is looking at. The girl replies that she saw a shooting star land near the mansion of Gavin, whom her mother hates. With a smile, Xenia reassures her mother, saying that Zack will return to get his revenge on Gavin. The matriarch hears the doorbell and seems surprised by the sudden noise. Zack Young appears at the door. The woman greets him happily, and he asks where Xenia is. The young woman appears with a seductive look, calling Zack's name to get his attention. Zack holds her in a suggestive way and tells her to hurry up, as he's very worked up. The girl's mother is still there, and Zack tells her to go boil some water. Xenia tells her boyfriend not to rush and mentions that Gavin has also moved into the neighborhood. Fury takes over Zack, who fumes that Gavin dared to show up before he had a chance to look for him. The girl's mother reveals to Zack that Gavin rented a mansion in the neighborhood to be close to Xenia. With a look of anger, Zack promises he'll make a call that will make his rival regret this for the rest of his life. With a furious expression, he makes a call and asks to speak with a man named Biao. Next, a neon sign shows the entrance to a place called Box Club. In a ring, two fighters face off while someone in the crowd yells for one of them to go for it. Zack is on the phone, smiling, and offers 200,000 for his contact to take care of someone. Biao, the fighter with the mohawk, replies that he understands and will be back in 2 hours. The boxer tells his opponent to stop the fight because he has a job to do. Biao's opponent gets annoyed, calls him a cocky rookie, and asks if he wants a real fight. Biao lands a powerful punch on his rival, knocking him out of the match. The crowd is in shock, commenting that Biao is the new underground boxing champion. Back at the mansion, Gavin looks at the horizon and reflects that these will be the first stages of the apocalypse. His chubby friend complains that the situation is cruel and that he never imagined such a terrible fate for humanity. Gavin asks Yahello what he plans to do about the whole situation. Yahello states that he will follow his friend's instructions and do whatever he says. In a joking tone, his guide tells him to start by selling his own father to get money. The young man replies that his father has assets but won't believe in the apocalypse. He'll think his son has gone crazy. The group's leader explains that money will be worthless in 15 days and that only supplies will matter. Yahello agrees and says that even if his father beats him, he will sell everything until the family goes broke. With a serious look, the other interrupts him, asking what's wrong. His companion asks what's happening, and the answer comes quickly: the mansion is surrounded. Outside, henchmen surround the house, and one of them warns that the target cannot escape. Biao orders his men to break down the mansion door urgently. One of the intruders prepares to break down the door with a huge sledgehammer. The henchman tries to knock down the door but is repelled by an invisible force. Inside, the two friends watch the fallen man, and Yahello asks who the intruders are. Biao is surprised and questions if the resident noticed them, wondering if he is also a trained fighter. The resident recognizes Biao and calls him by his full name, Duan Hu Biao. Confused, the fighter asks how they know each other. In his thoughts, the hero of the house remembers that Biao is one of the lucky few who gained powers in the apocalypse and kept his consciousness. Biao threatens the young man, saying he won't go easy and will put him in bed for half a year. With a confident smile, the mansion's defender retorts that he won't go easy either and tells the attacker to get lost. Annoyed by the attitude, Biao charges forward to attack with a powerful punch. The target dodges the attack, thinking that the fighter's movements are too slow. Biao tries to hit him again, but the blow is dodged once more. The counter-attack comes with a powerful punch to the stomach, which knocks Biao to the ground. The henchmen are shocked to see their boss on the floor, finding the scene unbelievable. Biao struggles to get up while his opponent asks if he's going to give up. The underground champion refuses to surrender, stating that the person who can make him submit hasn't been born yet. With a kick, the defender knocks him down again, leaving him badly hurt. He then asks Biao what he thought of the fight, but the man remains on the ground, injured. The fighter replies that it's unbelievable to be so helpless, but he still refuses to give up. Smiling, his opponent says it would be boring if he surrendered easily and offers a way to save his sister. Shocked, Biao asks how he knew about his sister's illness. An image shows the fighter sitting beside his sick sister's bed with a sad expression. The mysterious man explains that Biao fights to raise money to save his sister, who has an incurable disease. Biao, now hopeful, asks if the one who knows everything can really cure her illness. With a smile, the young man claims to be the only one in the world who knows how to save her and says he must believe. The fighter believes him as he was defeated and asks what he must do to save his sister. The condition is given with a smile. Beat Zack Young badly enough to put him in bed for half a month. A look of fury appears on Bio's face as he already plans how he will deal with Zack. The fighter gathers his henchmen and orders them to follow him to carry out the new mission. One of the men asks if he really believes the stranger, and Biao confirms, saying he is his last hope. In his mansion, Zack Young assumes Gavin must already be in the hospital and that it's time to make his move. Xenia is with Zach and the girl calls him terrible with a mischievous smile. Suddenly, loud knocks on the door startle Zach. Xenia's mother gets annoyed by the interruption in the middle of the night and goes to answer. The woman opens the door and asks who these people are invading her home. Biao tells the lady to get out of the way so they can enter quickly. Xenia's mother scolds the fighter, calling him rude for barging into her house. Bio responds with a powerful punch and tells her to get out of his way. Once inside the mansion, Zach asks if the job was done. Zach approaches Biao and hands him 200,000, saying he didn't need to come in person. Biao's response is a powerful punch that hits Zach square in the face. Xenia is frightened to see her boyfriend bleeding and asks Biao what he is doing. The fighter ignores Xenia's plea and orders his men to attack Zach. The henchmen start punching and kicking Zach on the floor with great anger. The victim begs Biao to stop threatening him and saying his family would throw him in the gutter. Biao tells his henchmen to seize the attack for a moment. Annoyed, Zach says Biao made a huge mistake by attacking him. The group leader ignores his words and tells his men to tie up and rough up the target again. Zach panics, calling Biao crazy for doing this. The attacker then asks who Gavin Clark is and demands an explanation for all of this. Hanging upside down, the target reveals he only has access to 10 million and needs approval for more. Biao demands that he transfer the 10 million to his account immediately. Gavin's phone displays a text message with a notification of money received. His friend tells him the professor sent a message about a practical training session, but the young man says he's not going. Upon hearing that the training is near North New City, he changes his mind. With a smile, the young man decides to participate, as he was already planning to explore that place. His phone rings. It's Bio, reporting that Zach Young covered up 10 million and that the money has already been sent. In front of a lottery shop, the young man thinks about checking the tickets he bought. He reflects that if he wins the lottery, he can buy a lot of supplies for the apocalypse. A while later, he gets angry for not having won and wonders how this could have happened. The strategist thinks that nothing has changed and that maybe the director of events is one step ahead of him. He concludes that he needs to find another way to make a lot of money to prepare. College students gather in front of a bus for the finance practical training. The girls who tricked him at the restaurant stare at him, annoyed, and ask if he dares to show up. With a sarcastic smile, he questions why he wouldn't dare to show his face. They confront him for leaving without paying the restaurant bill and demand an explanation. With an indifferent expression, the young man asks what that has to do with him. One of the girls, with a sensual smile, asks him to pay the debt, promising they will do anything in return. The other, excited, says he's learned to be bad and that for 20,000, they won't be going back to the dorm. Smiling mischievously, the debtor says they must first lend him 40,000. The young man walks away from the girls with a smile, ready for a new fundraising plan.